The numbers tell you something is wrong, but the people who live here will tell you exactly what it is. In 2025, Las Vegas recorded its worst annual decline in visitor numbers since the organization responsible for tracking them began doing so in 1970, outside of the pandemic. 3.1 million fewer people showed up, and the ones who did leave, angrier than they arrived. Hi, my name is Justin, and this is Vegas Untold. We're going to go through the numbers that no one at the top of these corporations wants to lead with. And we're going to look at the few places that quietly ignored the dominant strategy and thrived because of it. Because the story of what's happening to Las Vegas right now is not just a story about economics, it's a story about betrayal. About a city that had the greatest deal in American entertainment and decided to take it apart, piece by piece, one fee at a time. Let's start with the number that frames all of it. Las Vegas welcomed approximately 38.5 million visitors. In 2025, that was a 7.5% drop from 2024, and the lowest annual total since the post-pandemic rebound of 2021. To put that in sharper terms, that total sits 11.4% below the all-time record of 42.9 million visitors set in 2016. And here is the detail that makes this feel different from a typical economic slowdown. Las Vegas recorded 12 consecutive months of year-over-year visitor declines throughout 2025. Every single month, not a summer slump, not a slow quarter that recovered. 12 straight months of fewer people choosing to make the trip. The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, the organization whose entire job is to put the most favorable possible spin on these numbers, called 2025 one of the most difficult operating environments the destination had faced since the pandemic. That is not a statement any tourism authority makes lightly. So how did Las Vegas get here? There are several answers to that question, and they layer on top of each other in ways that make the problem considerably harder to fix than the executives running these properties would like to admit. The first answer involves pricing, and it comes directly from the mouth of one of the most powerful casino CEOs in the world. In October of 2025, MGM Resorts president and CEO Bill Hornbuckle sat down for an earnings call and said something that became the defining quote of the year for anyone following what was happening to Las Vegas. When we think about pricing and things that got everyone's attention, whether it's the infamous bottle of water or Starbucks coffee at Excalibur that cost $12, shame on us. We should have been more sensitive to the overall experience. Shame on us. Those three words from one of the most senior executives in American hospitality confirmed publicly what locals and longtime visitors had been saying for years. Las Vegas had gotten so aggressive with its pricing that a company the size of MGM had to publicly apologize for selling coffee at a price that embarrassed them, and Hornbuckle did not stop there. "We lost control of the narrative," he said. That phrase circulated everywhere because it captured something real. Las Vegas had not just raised prices. It had lost the story it used to tell about itself. The story that said, "Come here with whatever you have and we will make it work." That story was over, and the data confirmed it in ways that went far beyond coffee prices. Resort fees at major strip properties now range from $44 to $57 per night. Mandatory charges added on top of whatever room rate drew you in during the booking process. Parking, which was free at major strip casinos for decades, is now a separate line item at almost every significant property. MGM Resorts properties charge $20 for self-parking on weekdays and $25 on weekends, with valet running $40 a day. Tourism industry insiders spent much of 2025 urging major properties to place a moratorium on resort fees entirely, arguing that the fees had created a perception of Las Vegas as a city that no longer offered real value. They could not get the big operators to budge. One travel industry executive put it plainly: the level of service had not kept pace with the pricing. She said the cleanliness of hotel rooms in Las Vegas was, in her view, at an all-time low. And here's the critical psychological dynamic that Las Vegas has consistently underestimated. People do not just object to high prices, they object to what high prices communicate. When you charge someone to park before they've placed a single bet, before they've ordered a drink, before they've done anything except show up, you are sending a message. That message is, we do not trust you to spend enough here on your own, so we're going to take it up front. That message lands. The Las Vegas Review-Journal's Casino and Gaming reporter named the pricing conversation the defining business story of the year, noting that it triggered an international conversation about whether strip operators were, in the words making the rounds, stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. Locals felt this the most directly. Las Vegas residents have always had a different relationship with the Strip than tourists do. They don't come for a once-in-a-lifetime experience. They come because it's down the road. A dinner out, a quick stop to meet friends, a casual hour at a machine before heading home. That casual relationship required one thing above all else. It had to be easy to show up. When parking fees arrived, that ease disappeared. Local residents describe how, until recently, even they faced strict parking time limits at strip hotels and casinos. Often not enough time to have dinner and walk around comfortably afterward. That finally started to shift only after the visitor numbers cratered in 2025, when some properties began quietly running local-focused promotions. But by then, the relationship had already been damaged, because when locals stop coming in for a Tuesday dinner, the Strip does not just lose that dinner tab. It loses the ongoing, low-stakes connection that keeps a city feeling alive between the big events. It loses the sense that this place belongs to the community as much as it belongs to the tourists. When that goes, the Strip starts to feel like exactly what critics say it has become. A transactional machine parked in the middle of the desert, designed for people who arrive by plane, spend as much as possible in 48 hours, and leave. And even those people are starting to reconsider. Now, it would be convenient if the pricing story was the only story, but it isn't, because 2025 also delivered a second blow that the casinos cannot price correct their way out of. Canada stopped coming. For decades, Canada has been one of Las Vegas's most reliable international markets. In 2025, Las Vegas had nearly 1.2 million visitors from Canada, accounting for roughly 25% of all international visitors to the city. Canada has been one of the top 2 countries sending international visitors to Las Vegas since the year 2000. And in 2025, those visitors disappeared at a rate that shook the entire industry. Canadian visitors to Las Vegas dropped 24% in 2025, prompting the LVCVA to launch a $3.5 million campaign specifically targeting Canadian tourism recovery. Data from Harry Reid International showed around 1/3 fewer WestJet visitors and roughly 31% fewer Air Canada visitors compared to the prior year. Major Canadian carriers cut capacity to Las Vegas by 30% overall. The reason was largely political. President Trump's tariff war with Canada, combined with his repeated comments about Canada potentially becoming the 51st state, triggered a cultural and economic backlash that played out directly in travel decisions. A tracking study published in August 2025 found that 63% of Canadian travelers said they were less likely to visit the United States, citing politics as a reason. Among those who said U.S. policy affects their travel choices, 80% pointed to tariffs as a deterrent. The head of the Culinary Workers Union in Las Vegas described the phenomenon as the Trump slump. One economics professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, calculated that Canadian spending had supported around 43,000 jobs in the region and contributed $3.6 billion to the local economy. That is not a rounding error. That is infrastructure, and it evaporated in a single year. Las Vegas Mayor Shelley Berkeley went on record in August 2025 saying that Canadian visitation had, in her words, slowed to a drip. She called for de-escalation in the political relationship between the two countries. That is how serious this became. A sitting mayor of Las Vegas publicly appealing for diplomacy because a tourism market had collapsed. Caesars Entertainment CEO Tom Reeg acknowledged it directly during the company's earnings calls, calling the Canadian softness a meaningful drag on results and noting that Canadian visitors, despite representing only 3 or 4% of total visitors, accounted for a significant portion of the decline in room nights during the second quarter alone. Hornbuckle said on a quarterly investor call that the Canadian drop began around the time the trade war started and, in his own words, had not come back. It's worth sitting with that. The 2 largest casino operators in Las Vegas, MGM and Caesars, the companies that own most of the Strip, both acknowledged on investor calls that they had lost a major international market and did not know when it was coming back. And here's the part that makes the Canadian story especially painful for Las Vegas. Canadian visitors tend to be high-value guests. They stay longer, spend more per trip, and return repeatedly. They are exactly the kind of customer a city trying to rebuild trust with the broader market desperately needs. Instead, they were being driven away not by anything Las Vegas did directly, but by a political environment the casinos had zero control over. So you have pricing, alienating domestic visitors, you have politics, gutting the international base, and then you have a third layer underneath both of those, a structural shift that has been building for years and that no hotel renovation or marketing campaign can reverse. Gambling is no longer the anchor. Think about what Las Vegas was built on. The promise was simple: come here, and the experience of being here will cost you almost nothing, because the casino will make its money when you play. Cheap rooms were the bait. Free drinks were the hospitality. The cheap buffet was the goodwill. All of it existed to keep you on the floor. That model created a certain kind of magic. It made regular people feel like they had access to something special. The factory worker from Ohio sitting at the same blackjack table as the hedge fund manager from Manhattan was not a quirk of Las Vegas. It was the entire point. That model is gone. The replacement model charges you before you play, prices most people off the main floor, and concentrates the best experience at the very top of the income bracket. Table game minimums during normal hours now run $25 to $50 for blackjack at strip properties, climbing higher during peak periods. Resort fees now range from $45 to $52 per night, on top of a 13.38% room tax. And the machines themselves have changed. The games that used to extend your dollar have been quietly recalibrated. Older slot machines typically paid back 95 to 98 cents on every dollar played. Many of today's video slots on major strip properties pay back closer to 85 cents. What used to be an hour's entertainment on $20 can now burn through in 10 minutes. People feel that change even when they cannot explain it. They just know their money doesn't go as far, and that feeling has a compounding effect that the industry has been reluctant to admit. Gamblers talk. They talk to their spouses about the session that went sideways before they even got comfortable at the table. They talk to their coworkers about how the Friday minimum was $60. They post on forums. They leave reviews that use the word ripped off where they used to use the word fun. Word of mouth built Las Vegas over 50 years. Word of mouth is now doing some of the damage, and there is another force accelerating that drift, one that the Strip cannot compete with by raising a few room rate floors or launching a promotional campaign. The phone in everyone's pocket, legal sports betting apps, online poker platforms, and live dealer casino games have fundamentally changed the accessibility of gambling in America. States that were entirely off limits to gaming a decade ago now have mature digital markets. A person in Ohio, in Georgia, in Texas can open an app and play blackjack against a live dealer on their television without booking a flight, paying for parking, or sitting through a resort fee disclosure. Vegas cannot out-convenient that. It was never supposed to try. The city's competitive advantage was always the experience, the sound of the room, the energy of the floor, the feeling that you were somewhere that existed nowhere else. But that advantage only holds as long as the experience justifies the cost of getting there. When it stops justifying that cost, the app wins. And right now, for a growing segment of the casual gambling audience, the math is increasingly pointing toward the app. Steve Hill publicly acknowledged that the 2025 visitation decline was concentrated among lower-income segments. That is the quiet admission behind all the carefully worded earnings call language. The middle class did not stop going to Las Vegas because of tariffs or trade wars. They stopped going because Las Vegas stopped making sense for them financially. And when they play online instead, they don't need a hotel room, a rental car, or a resort fee. They just need a signal. And where did the people who did still want to be somewhere in Nevada go? Nevada locals casinos, properties catering specifically to Nevada residents rather than tourists, were up nearly 6% in December 2025. Downtown Las Vegas posted a new annual revenue record in 2025, generating more than $951 million, up 2.1% from the year before. The visitors did not disappear from Nevada. They just moved away from the Strip. They went to the places that still remembered who built this city, and those places are worth looking at because they reveal something the mega resort strategy refuses to acknowledge. South Point Casino made headlines in 2025 for illustrating how traditional customer-focused hospitality can thrive in a challenging market, with friendly service, fair pricing, and a loyal staff culture. The general manager there has been open about the fact that the property's buffet loses money. Not a little money, a lot. He has no intention of closing it. When a journalist asked him what the buffet was for, if it wasn't turning a profit, he didn't explain or lecture. He pointed to the slot machines. That single gesture contains more wisdom about the Las Vegas business model than most quarterly earnings reports. You do not make money by squeezing guests before they sit down. You make money by giving them a reason to stay. Then there is Circus Circus, the oldest original structure still standing on the Strip, and the one currently doing something no major property would dare do. In February of 2026, Circus Circus brought bingo back to the Las Vegas Strip for the first time in more than a decade, opening a 225-seat hall on the casino's second floor. Paper bingo. Classic, uncomplicated, nostalgic paper bingo. The decision to bring it back was not driven by data analytics or focus groups. It was driven by understanding what people actually miss about Las Vegas. They miss feeling like the place was built for them. Circus Circus is also one of the last Strip properties to still offer free parking for all visitors, a distinction that has become increasingly rare and increasingly meaningful as the fees elsewhere pile up. The contrast between what Circus Circus and South Point are doing and what the major Strip operators have been doing is not subtle. It is the difference between a business that sees its customers as a long-term relationship and a business that sees them as a transaction to be maximized. And in 2025, the customers voted with their feet. There is one more dimension to this story that deserves honest treatment. Because some people hear the complaints about Las Vegas, the fees, the odds, the pricing, and they say, but the Strip generated record gaming revenue. And on the surface, that's true. Strip gaming revenue reached roughly $8.8 billion in 2025. So how do you reconcile record revenue with a tourism collapse? The answer is that these casinos have been charging more to fewer people. Revenue per available room, the key profitability metric for hospitality, held up even as occupancy fell because operators were charging higher rates to the guests who remained. They are extracting more from a shrinking base. In the short term, that can look like success. In the long term, it is how you destroy a market. Because every visitor who leaves feeling squeezed is one more person who tells their network that Las Vegas is not worth it. And in the age of social media, that word spreads at a velocity that no marketing budget can outpace. The city launched its own campaign in 2025, a citywide promotional sale specifically to try to counter the perception that it no longer offered value. Tourism executives were openly acknowledging that they needed to counter the perception that Vegas is no longer the value destination it once was. That is a remarkable sentence. The people running the largest tourism machine in American history were spending money trying to convince people of something that should require no convincing at all, that coming to Las Vegas is a good deal. The fact that they had to run that campaign tells you everything about how far the gap between perception and reality had grown. And here's the uncomfortable truth for the industry. The gap is not a perception problem, it is a reality problem. Budget-conscious travelers are choosing other destinations. That is the direct assessment from the director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Nevada. Not choosing Atlantic City or Reno, choosing to stay home, choosing the casino a 2-hour drive away, choosing an app on their phone, choosing a destination where they don't feel like every step forward comes with a new fee attached. So where does that leave Las Vegas? The optimistic case is real. Convention attendance remained at roughly 6 million attendees in 2025, nearly matching 2024 levels. WrestleMania 41 at Allegiant Stadium broke records. The Wizard of Oz at Sphere surpassed 2 million tickets sold within its first months of operation. The city can still produce moments that no other destination on Earth can match. But moments are not a tourism model. Repeat visitors are a tourism model. And the repeat visitor, the person who booked the same long weekend every year, who knew which buffet to hit first, who had a favorite dealer at a mid-strip casino and asked for them by name, that person has been making a different calculation. They're running the numbers. The room, plus the resort fee, plus the parking, plus dinner, plus the games that move faster than they used to, and they're finding that the math no longer works. The city that once made ordinary people feel like high rollers has re-engineered itself for actual high rollers, and in doing so, it may have traded the loyalty of millions for the spending of a few. That is a bet. And 2025 is what it looks like when the bet starts coming up short. Las Vegas has reinvented itself before. It has survived things that should have broken it. But this moment is different because the problem is not external. It's not a recession, it's not a pandemic, it's a decision. A long series of very deliberate decisions to extract more from the same guest, to add one more fee, to cut one more perk, to push the minimum a little higher, and trust that people would keep coming anyway. They kept coming, until they didn't. And now the city is left with a question that a billion-dollar marketing campaign cannot answer. How do you win back someone who stopped believing you care, whether they show up? Las Vegas built its legend one honest deal at a time. The fee structure being dismantled, one moratorium at a time, might be the only way to start building it back. Las Vegas has a long memory, and the locals who watch the Strip price itself out of their own lives remember exactly when it changed. If you want to keep following what's really happening here as the city tries to answer that question, consider liking the video and subscribing for more.